Hello, everybody. Very pleased to have you on this webinar on the innovation in tomorrow's new worlds. And I'm very pleased to welcome our panelists, Sabine Klauke and Hervé Gilibert. Sabine Klauke is the head of engineering at Airbus Defence Space, and Hervé Gilibert is the CTO at ArianeGroup. Myself, I am Vincent Bamberger, the managing partner of Digital Paris. And we will have a moderator with us, which is Albert Meige, the CEO of Presans. I will do a very short introduction. We done a survey, actually, and thank you very much for a lot of you that have a response to this survey. And just is to set the scene and a type of warm up for the panelists. We ask some companies, and you have on this slide the different companies that have answered. What is changing due to COVID on innovation? So actually, it's quite big companies, and half of them is working in aerospace defense, but 50% of them is working in other type of industry. So the first topic that we have is that COVID has a high impact on innovation and even on R&D organization. As you can see on the survey, more that I would say 70% of the people have answered that innovation will have a huge impact, and quite a lot of reflection has done on R&D organization and processes. On the second question, because one of the topic is innovation going to slow down because of COVID? What will happen? So actually, it's absolutely not the case. There is, I would say, an acceleration of the main trends that was already in place in innovation. Agility, as you can see, open innovation, digitalization, and some skills that are changing quite quickly in the innovation. And in the same manner, the new type of technologies are boosted by innovation. Obviously, what is robotization, distanciation, simulation, forecasting, and artificial intelligence technologies are, I will say, the top winner of what is happening currently. In terms of perception, so actually, and probably there is a little bias in this survey because the people that have answered to this survey obviously are very involved in R&D, but innovation seems to be, I would say, the solution, or at least a very important solution. As you can see, to the question, will COVID impact negatively innovation? There is a majority that are saying we disagree with this statement. When innovation will be the key leverage post-crisis, there is a large majority to see innovation as a solution on the post-crisis world. And last but not least, after leaving the floor to Albert and to our panelists, on the question of what is on top of the agenda of the current company regarding innovation, on cost-cutting, obviously is one of the topics, but if you look the other topics, it's also all the topics that are coming on top of the list. Reallocation of the resources is also coming, but, and it was quite a surprise for us, all what is linked to breakthrough innovation is coming now on top of the list. Actually, we want to go quicker and to make some breakthrough innovation to deal with the situation. And last but not least, there will be some reprioritization in order to be more efficient on the services or on the products that we are delivering to the world. So this was a kind of, I would say, warm up for our session. And Albert, please take the lead and let's go through a certain level of and certain questions that we have designed with our panelists.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Vincent. Good evening, Sabine. Good evening, Hervé. So just a reminder for the people who have joined us in the meantime, we are together with Sabine Klauke, who is Head of Engineering at Airbus Defence Space, and also with Hervé Gilibert, who is a CTO at ArianeGroup. Thank you very much again to be with us. Maybe as a very, very short introduction, I just would like you guys to remember that over the last few months, since the beginning of the COVID crisis, but also at the beginning of the lockdown, many very large companies have innovated. And this innovation took place in various different ways. It could be companies that launched actually new products. It can be companies that have hacked existing products to fight COVID. And I think most of us have in mind the scuba diving mask from Decathlon that was hacked to make a breather. This is a second type of innovation. And also, there has been many companies that have used their capabilities to produce stuff which is not necessarily very innovative in itself, such as masks, such as hydroalcoholic gel, these kind of things. And some companies have used their industrial capabilities, for example, to produce these things to help us fight the virus. And so we are going to speak about innovation, R&D, engineering as a way to recover from this crisis. And for the people who are joining now, please stay tuned until the end of the webinar, because at the end of the webinar, we are going to reveal what are the most important technologies that have appeared during the crisis and that will be very important in the future. Once again, thank you a lot, Sabine. Thank you a lot, Hervé, to be with us today. The first theme that I would like to address with you guys this evening is, in your opinion, what is going to be the role of research and innovation, broadly speaking, for the phase of recovery? And maybe we can start with Sabine, and then Hervé can build on it.
Thank you, Albert, and hello everybody tonight. Yes, first of all, thanks for the invitation, and I'm really very happy to be here with a very good colleague of mine, Hervé, because for sure we are in the same ecosystem. So I'm the head of engineering for Airbus Defence Space, but I also have a long history in the group on the commercial aircraft side. And sometimes I will speak for the group, sometimes more for the defense and space side, because for sure the impact is just enormous for our industry. So looking at the recovery, I really would like to take 2 sentences about the crisis itself. Because for us, the first point was really how do we react in the crisis, how do we survive? And here, first of all, I would say the creativity of the engineers was at the forefront as well. So first of all, safety came first, and we really had to organize our working differently in order to manage to deliver and to as well to really deliver to customer value, to our commitments, and to be able as well to secure the revenues in order to save the companies, if you wish. And that was the really very first point. And then, as you said, yes, there was a second part, which was really, what can we do on top? And there was a really strong agility and reactivity of the teams across the different countries, because Airbus is forever European and really dispersed, in using ALM technologies to do breathing masks, helping in co-creation, very quickly coming together with different types of companies to help in developing oxygen generators for the medical areas, or even building mobile medical containers in order to help prepare hospitals. So things which are not really in our core business, but which were targeted into how can we use our know-how and expertise in helping the society. Over and above, for sure, we are an aircraft company, and we used heavily our test pilots and test aircraft fleets to as well bring masks from China into Europe and then into the different into the different countries. So that was during the crisis, and it was really key for us to come up quickly into a setup, be it very dispersed and very, very diverse, to be able to deliver, using different ways of working with our customers to be able to certify things even in a distant manner, have critical design reviews in a mobile way of working. And that meant as well that we really had to ramp up our ability to work from home and to work even off of the offices, which is widely the case, but it was augmented even in the very secured areas in which we are working as well. So then, first phase of that crisis over, we really went into the cost cutting. And here, yes, the R&T and R&D in the wider sense needed to help with cost cutting. So that means that we really went into all our projects. We cut, I would say, we cut by 20 to even 30% in the different areas. In the first place, to just safeguard the company. And this we did by actually classifying all our technology projects. We had the so-called do or die projects, which we definitely needed to go on with and wanted to safeguard. Then some others where we looked at rescheduling. So what could we push forward a little bit into the future? Challenging the content. What are really the vital things? Do we need to fly everything? Can we do a test differently, or really relook at the scope? And fourth, what are the things we can really put on hold? And that was, I think, key even for the future, because now looking at all the different means, we can take that out again and have that classification and build our decisions based on that. So with this, we really learned in prioritizing, really turning the stones twice, looking at customer value even more, and as well coming to quicker decisions in terms of fail fast. So yes, looking broadly into innovation and technology, but being able to quicker funnel down and be sure of the technologies we take.
Thank you very much. Hervé?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and good to see you, Sabine. But not so much the case in the recent month. I will have a very similar answer from my side. Indeed, in the very first days of the crisis, everything with our engineers who had a very, very limited access to our sites was about creating solutions to support the ones that had to be supported with the crisis. So we had the same, our innovation hangars. We have one innovation hangar in each and every, on each and every site in our company. And our innovation hangars, our 3D printing machines were immediately used by our people to create new devices that were protection devices, supports for helmets or whatever, supports to lock, to open the doors without touching them, and so on. So this was fantastic. So hydroalcoholic gel also, especially in our teams in Kourou, where we have a chemical lab, was immediately a focus for them. So this is the first reaction, and we could see how our teams can be mobilized, creative, and fast in creating, which is always good to see and good to take in that circumstance. Then, as was said by Sabine, the next step was unfortunately that our R&D and R&T budgets had to be used to support the resilience, the financial resilience of our industrial companies, I speak in plural, this is general. So the first aspect of the recovery phase, of the support of R&D to the recovery phase, is with the financial aspect. Nevertheless, in our field of activity, which is space launchers, I think we have to be a bit more subtle when describing that. We are, to some extent, lucky on the topic. And to explain that, I think we have to distinguish R&T and R&D. In our domain, R&D meaning the development of a product, of a system, of a service that we deliver directly on the market. In our domain, R&D is requiring very, very high non-recurring costs, and it is paid by space agencies everywhere in the world. R&T is more dealing with low TRL, maturing technologies to bring them at the maturity level that will allow introducing them in our development, in our R&D programs. And R&T, in our model, is more self-funded and also supported, of course, by our dear space agencies. So R&D, we have the chance that being supported by agencies, having contracts, example given, this is the most famous example, of course, these days, contracts to develop the Ariane 6 launcher. This contract has not disappeared. We have not lost the contract due to the COVID crisis. So we were not left alone with ourselves to try to recover and to be resilient by ourselves only. We kept the support of our agencies for the development activities. For the R&T activities, which are self-funded, this is different. And here we did apply, this is mandatory, and this has been done, as we could see, by many other companies around us. We have been obliged to support the resilience of the company by cutting by typically 30%, yes, also. The budgets we planned for this year, which corresponds also to the amount of time that was blocked without working, okay. Nevertheless, this is not only a matter of delaying or reducing the budgets to cover the non-covered phase. This was also a matter of, I will not use the word sanitary measures, but we took some sanitary measures, or we did sanitize, this is better. We did sanitize our portfolio of projects in the same way as described by Sabine. We have revisited it, the R&T and the R&D priorities have been reworked to focus much more on our short-term goals. What was in the pipe and what was about to leave the pipe was privileged. To reduce our more mid-term goals, so less money, less goals, of course. And we did also adapt our plans to the long-term consequences or the fundamental consequences of the crisis as we could detect it very early. So if I take two examples or to illustrate that in a company like ours, this led us to quasi-stop our so-called industrial innovation. So we considered that to make savings this year, it was better to stop our activities, or to postpone, of course, our activities that were dealing with improving our competitiveness, improving our industrial efficiency in short to mid-term, because there was one rationale, which is that this will require in the future, this will require capex that we might not have. Okay, so let's forget a bit. Another element of rationale is that this is not generating growth, and we did prefer to dedicate the remaining money and to reprioritize our activities, to dedicate it to new domains or domains that have been boosted by the crisis. And it is obvious for everybody that everything dealing about renewable energy, everything dealing with hydrogen particularly, has become, I would say, a must for all companies close to that technological domain. And by chance, we as launchers, designer and manufacturer, we are handling hydrogen since more than 40 years, cryogenic hydrogen. This is really our business, and we are used to transform hydrogen into power, into high levels of energy in a safe way, which is of course a stake with that SpaceI. So we clearly boosted our future in the field of hydrogen. And this is something, by the way, that we that we are doing together with Airbus and with Safran Group. We have everyone in Europe, and here I'm just quoting a French example. The French Civil Aviation Agency, DGAC, has launched together with Safran, Airbus, and us, ArianeGroup, an initiative towards the hydrogen-propelled airplane for the future. So we are all together on that. And this obviously has been boosted at the end of the crisis, at the end of the confinement period. This leads me also just to highlight one point, which in my view has really to be stressed. This is the support we have by the public sector on all these topics. So this it is absolutely outstanding to see how much each national agency or each public agency in each country, and also the European Union, have taken all measures to really support the move in the direction I've just mentioned. Hydrogen is an example, but more generally, renewable energy, everything dealing with data, artificial intelligence, everyone knows that very well, has been really boosted, and this is a remarkable consequence, which leads me to conclude that R&D will not only support our short-term resilience with this mechanical financial aspect, but also by boosting now the transition to the next world. This is obvious.
Okay, so thank you very much, both Sabine and Hervé. That's super interesting. Of course, you said many interesting things. What I liked from Sabine's explanation is the fact that despite the fact that you guys had to cut costs and stuff, you had a key learning, which is we learned how to prioritize in a very efficient and rapid manner. And Hervé, the thing that you said about hydrogen is actually leading us to the second theme that I would like to discuss with you. And before jumping to this second theme, which has to do with acceleration of trends, I just would like to welcome the new participants that have just joined us. We are a few hundred people now. And I would like to remind the participants that you have the possibility to ask questions to our guests. So please don't hesitate to use the Q&A to ask questions. And going back to the second theme, so you said, Hervé, that the crisis had accelerated the transition towards using hydrogen, etc. I was wondering, do you see the acceleration, or on the contrary, do you see that certain trends have been accelerated, or on the other way, trends which have been stopped by the crisis?
Well, the point I would stress at first, and I will keep only one point, not to be too long, is about our ways of working. There has been drastic evolutions of our ways of working, which was made mandatory by the situation, and from which we have to draw lessons now. The experience we had is that obviously our engineers could not work on site for a while. We had to find solutions to have remote work done efficiently. We were a little bit suspicious and we were worrying about that at the very beginning. And in the very first days, maybe in the 3-4 first weeks of the period, we had a good surprise, which is that we stated that we kept a very high level of efficiency. The productivity of our engineering teams was not bad at all, much better than what we were believing. And we did realize that just after, we did realize that this was due to one thing. This is that these people were just doing the job they had as a duty they had in their backlog. They were focused on what they could do individually. So they were solving and tackling all the actions they had individually and that they could solve individually. So good progress in their individual production. However, after some time, typically 3-4 weeks, we started to see that then the machine was much less efficient, and there was the need that people interact with each other. So the lack of interaction was obvious. And on topics like ours, designing launcher, Ariane 6 launcher under development today, it is obvious that by essence, this is a matter of co-working. This is a matter of collaboration between various disciplines. This is a matter of multifunctional teams, of plateau, people work on plateau. And so this collaboration was affected by the non-collocation of people. So we have not yet drawn, of course, people have come back at work and we have organized that. I would say that we have not yet drawn all the consequences of that statement. But it is obvious for us that we will have to take benefit of that, to organize the work differently, to find a way to have time, to have moments when people are alone, are not disturbed by meetings, by whatever, which is of less value added for what they have to deliver. And moments when people are together, the collocation and the co-working is essential. And when saying that, this brings me to speak a little bit about the so-called agile approach for management. It is obvious that the Scrum or Scrum at scale or whatever frameworks that have been very well formalized and that are very well practiced and that were, I would say, entering in our companies. I know that this is already a lot the case with Airbus. This is the case since 1 year in our company. We realized that these methods, this approach with sprint phases, example even, are probably a solution to cope with what I mentioned before as difficulty, while, and this is something we had already experienced just before the crisis, while really leveraging in a very spectacular manner our collective efficiency on projects.
Okay, thank you very much, Hervé. Sabine, would you like to build on top of?
Thank you. Yeah, I would actually really like to build on what Hervé said. Yes, teletravail, and we really changed our habits there. And I have to say that this really brought us to more empowerment and trust as well. Because these are things which we are trying to push in terms of the leadership in a big company like Airbus. For sure, it's not always the easiest, and we had a lot of pilots, but was it generalized? Here, in the time where everybody needed to work from home, we really built a lot of trust that yes, we could be efficient. And in some areas, it was even more efficient than in usual office times. And for sure, this brought directly the point up, okay, how can we profit from this even after the crisis? And how can we generalize these things and maybe really rework on our cost basis? And we have directly after the crisis brought this into pilot cases. And I really want to first underline as well what Hervé said. After the first weeks, so we took a very much top-down crisis approach, same rules for everybody in the company. This with over 35,000 people is somewhat unoptimized. So we had shifts for everybody, blue and red, to make sure we keep the health rules inside. That was generalized because we were really in a crisis mode. When we could open up a bit, we could really give flexibility to the teams. And that was really what made the difference, because in a company like Airbus Defence Space, we have a large variety of products and projects. And that meant that there wasn't one fits all. And we then discovered, when the team could organize themselves to see how much presence time or when they would need to meet and how they would organize that in a manner where health and safety measures were applied, then they could really excel. And then they were really happy with the setup. So based and building on that, we had pilot cases in all the different sites, and we are really happy here in Toulouse. We were just finishing a new building and we were just about to move in. And finally, we took this time during COVID. Yeah. Sorry. So we took the time during the crisis and just after the crisis to, in record time, have the outputs taken into reality. So actually, we have the first teams moving in just now, but they will move in with not generalized office desks anymore. And they have organized themselves to say, okay, let's reduce by 30%, but see what is our solution. And we just had the review today. It's really, really building trust into the teams as well. So we really used it as well to give the teams the opportunity to build on themselves. And even the managers which were doubting that we could really be efficient and working in this manner are now completely convinced. So these are first pilots. We want to generalize this, but it's an important point. Hervé was talking about agile, and here we had a real adaptation because we have internal agile coaches, and we are building on that method for some time, and especially in the software areas. And the team had to completely change from, yes, very much localized ways of working into a completely remote way, even in the coaching side. And that was for sure a step as well. With the customers, with the partners, we had a lot of remote ways of working that were put in place, and these ones will also stay. Like, can we do supplier surveillance by video? We don't have to travel all the time. And these are little things which are really very efficient, which will stay. And I already mentioned the way how we do acceleration is, I would think, much more streamlined than what we had before. And that's a gain, which is just a habit right now.
Thank you very much. Once again, super interesting. We have started receiving quite a few questions in the Q&A. We will not have time to take them all, of course, but there are several questions related to did you see if the crisis has increased the pace of the digital transformation, whether it's at the level of the R&D department or at the global level of the company? And this is something that we may also discuss a little bit later on during the discussion, but I would like to hear your thought briefly on that.
For me, it's 2 points in this, really in the digitalization side. So on one hand, I mean, there was this immediate need, and I think we were laughing because we were both thinking about a little joke. This question about who pushed digitalization in the company. Was it the CEO, the DTO, or was it COVID? And yes, we augmented the number of VPNs and external clients, and even the number of laptops dramatically in the very first days of the COVID. So that definitely was a step. Is that the only answer to digitalization? For sure not. And for us, there is 2 other areas on which I would like to build. The one is really end-to-end digitalization as one real ambition in our research and technology world. We call that end-to-end digital design, manufacturing, and service, which is really the next step in the way we digitalize our processes, our internal processes, and we're pushing very much on that. So has it accelerated since the crisis? I would say we have again focused much more, and as it is one of the big ambitions, this one will have a highway, let's say. And as well, the part of artificial intelligence, secure clouds, especially in the environment of defense and space, the secure cloud subject is key. And that's again one of the ambitions that we have today. The only solutions in this area, in the cloud areas, are basically American or Chinese. Here, we as a European sovereign industry, we have to catch up, and this is definitely one of the areas we will focus on.
All right, so we'll go a little bit deeper in the technology side in the end of the webinar. Hervé, would you like to say a few words about the digital transformation also?
Well, in fact, ArianeGroup is not a company that develops anything as a service or as products delivered to customers based on the digital solutions. Of course, our rockets have a flight software, which is a very sophisticated one. This is obvious. So we are more users than we were. I like the joke by Sabine. We were we were subject to a real transformation of our IT infrastructure, which was boosted as it has never been, and we reached new services for our employees that we were not expecting before many months from now. So this was much more a boost in the service provided internally to our employees, and this was obviously this was mandatory due to the need to work much more remotely and to be connected, being each of us far from the other ones. So.
Thank you very much. There are many other very interesting questions. One of them being, and I'm not going to ask it to you because I think we will have a specific webinar later on this particular question, but I'm just telling you what the question was because I think it's quite interesting. So you both mentioned before that hydrogen had been, the pace of adoption of the hydrogen had been accelerated. And at the same time, we saw that the crisis has made the price of oil going down very drastically. So there is a strong incentive now that the price of oil is so low to use this kind of energy sources. So how hydrogen is going to be competitive. But this is going to be another webinar. Teasing for the next time. The third theme that I wanted to discuss with you was related to the geography. We have seen during the crisis that many companies in various sectors were not able to deliver anymore because part of the supply chain, part of the people, etc., was in other countries, and where with the travel bans, it was getting fairly complicated. So I was wondering, what are your views in terms of what is the future of research and innovation, which is today for most companies, it tends to be global to some extent. Do you think R&I is going to become more centralized, more local? What are your views on that? And
so I start maybe.
Okay, please start.
I mean, for Airbus, it is basically in the DNA. We have always been not centralized and especially in development. This is a quite rare situation. You named it. A lot of the times, especially the engineering, the R&T and R&D is very much centralized. and we always had it across the nations. And I think we have learned over the years really to take that as an asset, and this will continue. I guess that we can maybe travel a little bit less because we've learned how to cope differently with the geographical situation. As well, we are a European company, but we were very much reaching out worldwide for innovations. We have innovation centers in China, in America, everywhere. And I think this trend will go on. That was an asset as well, because actually, yes, in some areas we heavily learned in China how to cope with the COVID before it actually struck heavily Europe. And you mentioned the supply chain. Yes, it was very difficult, but we have to say that we had a very strong surveillance together with our partners and to see that the supply chain would work. And that actually worked pretty well. We didn't have any real disruptions. For sure, our demand went down as well. So we are not foreseeing big changes there, probably more in the day-to-day life and how the interactions work. So here we would rather go into even more digital and interactive, but building on the strengths of a more dispersed R&T and especially R&T situation. Today, the technology trends, and for us, for instance, electrification batteries in satellites and then now as well in aircraft for sure, are a key one. I cannot imagine to just look at this in a very local manner. Here we are worldwide scanning the market for years, and that's really a key asset as well. For
the rocket company ArianeGroup, the question, this is a little bit like digital. Some minutes ago, it is a bit less relevant because basically we are much less global than Airbus. We are basically a European company, German and French company. So re-internalization of activities from everywhere in the world to Europe is not a question for us. We are already based in Europe, and we have almost everything of our products done, designed, developed, and produced in Europe. Our supply chain is totally in Europe. There are few exceptions, very few exceptions, which are not dramatic. They do not put us at risk. And the exceptions that deserve a specific attention, in fact, are more in the field of very specific components on our products that have been identified even before the crisis as being strategic, and for which an re-insourcing approach in Europe has already been launched before the crisis, to keep these strategic assets, or to have strategic sources, in Europe also. But this is a move that had been engaged before. It will go on. It might be accelerated. In my view, this is probable, but this is a relatively minor aspect quantitatively of our business.
Thank you very much. So I would like to welcome the additional viewers that have joined us since the beginning of the session. I just also would like to remind you that we are together with Sabine Klauke, who is Head of Engineering at Airbus Defence Space, and with Hervé Gilibert, who is CTO at ArianeGroup, and we are discussing about the role of innovation in the recovery phase. And now we have two themes left to discuss in the remaining, let's say, 15 minutes. So the next theme is related to disruptive innovation. We have mentioned earlier during this session that there has been some cuts in R&D budgets. So now if we zoom on disruptive innovation, do you think that in the short term, disruptive innovation is going to be negatively impacted by the crisis, or on the contrary, would you like to strengthen these disruptive innovations, which are for the long term, for the transformation of the company? What are your thoughts on that?
Then
this time for me.
Go ahead, Hervé.
So, but it's a bit hard to say. In fact, and I think this depends on the domain. I would differentiate two domains to make it simple. There is everything which is about digital and digital related activities or technologies. Digital related meaning including everything about data, about artificial intelligence. This will not be a victim of the COVID crisis. These domains for sure will be very much boosted, and we see it already. Then in terms of disruptive technologies regarding more hardware technologies, hardware related technologies, development of disruptive systems, integrated systems involving hardware and video. In my view, these domains will be penalized in general. This will be the case particularly in large companies due to the reduction of the R&D budgets that I mentioned before to support the financial resilience. But this domain will be penalized also in the SMEs, in the startups, in my view, because these are activities which are producing results, outcomes in a much slower manner than the digital related activities. And these are activities, to make it short, which are capital intensive. And what we can see in that field, staying on the startups for a while, what we could see in the recent weeks is a move from the venture capitalist actors in such a way that they are reducing, or they are concentrating, which means reducing overall the budgets dedicated to Series A investment, and more going on with their previous investment, supporting the growth of the startups that have been successful after the first steps. So this is a general trend we can see. So in my view, there is a risk today for the startups belonging to the so-called deep tech area that less startups will appear in our landscape in the future. However, to balance that, it is obvious that everyone, especially startups in our countries, it's true in Germany, it is true in France, will be strongly supported by public financial support. They will be strongly supported, we see it in Germany, we see it in France, we see it on the European level, by the so-called rebound plans that are being implemented. And the ones beyond the ones dealing with digital matters that I mentioned earlier, the ones who are dealing with the domains that were promising before the crisis, these ones, in my view, might have an accelerated development. And the domains that were identified as the key ones, promising ones for the future, given to an analysis which was done, in my memory is correct, in 2017 by Goldman Sachs. There are 3 areas in our environment which will face a development, an exponential development in the 10, 20, 30 coming years. This is everything which is about renewable energy, about the protection of the planet. This is everything which is about data, data management, artificial intelligence, and so on again. And this is also space. So the last one, I like it very much, of course. This is also space, and space all the more has the particularity to be an enabler for the 2 first ones, an enabler for everything about identification of the planet, of space, and this is also an enabler for the development of data centers, clouds, so clouds in space, let's say, in the future. So in my view, in these three domains, disruptive innovation might be accelerated, maybe not immediately, but as this is on the long term, a natural evolution we will see for our future. The fact that each and every investor today is much more selective than before, obviously should lead to favor these areas.
Yes, first of all, I would really like to remind how big this crisis is, and especially for our sector, be it aerospace as a whole, then maybe defense and space in a bit a different manner. It is a huge crisis, and it will not be a quick ramp up. It will be a slow and a long ramp up. So, and first of all, I would really like to thank the governments and our governments for their help plans, industry helping plans, be it on the very short-term measures like short-time work, like things they can buy, but on the other hand, for us, mainly as well for our customers. So we didn't ask really for a lot of help directly, but we asked for the help to our customers. And I just remind in France, in Germany, the big airlines, they have had huge packages. And this is for sure helping the sector and helping us as well again. Now, if you talk about, and then the second area now is on the research and technology plans, where there's huge plans of boosting the industries as well. And here we come to the disruptive, let's say, fields, or the innovation fields. And I think here, yes, they take priorities, and one is on the whole field of electrification, hydrogen, and not only in the way of fuel cells, but also in the way of combustion with hydrogen. And then if you look further, it's as well the whole question of how we can produce green hydrogen in a volume that is needed for industrial needs, because we are far from having anything which would be sufficient. And here, let me give you maybe 3 examples. One of the commercial aerospace, then one in the defense, and one in the more space related area. So we are trying to keep disruptive innovation, as I said, a bit more prioritized, a bit more focused, and we are trying to continue to work with the startups and with a wide field through big projects. And then hydrogen is the one I would like to highlight really for the aerospace side, because for now a couple of years we have been starting to really look in what would be the next future airplane, and what do we need to do in terms of steps to really get to a green aircraft of the future, because we will have to become more sustainable in this whole industry field. And after the COVID, immediately it was clear that we couldn't sustain our programs in the pace that we wanted to have. Here the governments will help, because this is one of their fields as well that they push, and we are really trying to then take, let's say, the coordination not only with us. We are far too slow and far too heavy to go quick here, but we never thought we would go into a field like hydrogen industrial making. This is one of the fields which we are now taking on together with the industry and with the different regions, in order to bring it forward, because nobody else is doing it. And because if we really want to do a step, we are going into, somebody has to push it. So here, I think we are taking the responsibility and we are trying to really bring the whole sector into it and keeping the startups as well with us. A second example is on the defense side, and you probably know that there are big initiatives from the European players to be heard and to be a player in the geographical and in the geopolitical field. We need to invest and we need to do projects, and two big projects are emerging in the European combination, and the one is called Future Combat Air System, and it's not about an aircraft, but it's about an overall system. And this is one of the innovation fields where we really push for sovereignty because it's needed, and it's needed in the overall geopolitical situation, and where our vision is to build really an overall system where we can have the multiple assets playing together, and where we need then efficient data management, and this is bringing the secure cloud. We call it multi-domain combat cloud in the center, and this is where we are working with a whole system of startups as well, and where we are very open to really bring the whole ecosystem into play in order to build this European solution, which would then be able as well to shine and to swap over into the commercial side. Space, you named it, is another area where our home countries can really help us, where we need sovereignty, and where we had a huge invest just these days into the whole telecommunication field on one hand, where it's about bigger constellations to really bring the connectivity market forward, and which is actually securing an innovation which was done over the last couple of years, where it was about creating constellations and smaller telecom satellites which would work in constellations, and which would completely commercialize as well this whole sector, talking about OneWeb. Where here really the European governments have positioned themselves to safeguard it and to pull it forward. So very good and positive sign here. And on the other hand, there is a huge program of scientific programs coming up, which was decided before COVID, but this is for sure as well nurturing disruptive innovation, because in the space area and specifically in the science field, we always are on the edge of technology and on the possibilities in order to bring the newest things forward, and in order as well to really make the missions possible. Here we're talking about Earth observation and a lot of satellites and missions which are directly impacting our knowledge about our planet, and as well about our ways how we can influence our own acts. So I think in combination, yes, disruptive innovation will go forward. It will still be much more focused, and as Hervé said, there might be areas where it's much more difficult to have the globality of players in the front, but we are trying to help pulling this still with bigger projects. Then everything will need to be focused around these.
Excellent. So that's a very good news that disruptive innovation is not dead. I'm very happy about that. We are a little bit behind schedule, but it is so interesting that I think we should keep going a little bit. So for the viewers who are with us, and I know that there are quite a lot actually, we'll be maybe 10 minutes late, just so you know. We will make it short. Just before giving the floor back to Vincent for the wrap up, the last question that I wanted to ask you was related to technologies. We have already, you guys have mentioned the importance of, within this digital context, you have mentioned the importance of having a European cloud. You have mentioned the importance of hydrogen. Now, if you had to pick one technology just want to make it short, that appear to be super important during the crisis. Which technology would it be?
During the crisis, it's all about data again.
Yes,
It's about quick data linkage, digitalization. That's for sure the much more short-term thing, which we had during, and which we could already sense during the crisis. The hydrogen is a far bigger subject and therefore a longer term. So we couldn't sense it too much, unfortunately, during the crisis. What we could sense is that all of a sudden pollution was going down. So I think it gave a good ambition there to make that our target. Excellent.
Hervé, what are your thoughts?
So during the crisis, I would say, rather say after the crisis or just after the crisis. So not speaking again of hydrogen, which was done extensively until now. Maybe one subject, in my view, will benefit from the period to come, and this we can see the very first signs very clearly today. This is everything about the improvement of industrial efficiency in our factories through robotics. The robotization of our industry is obviously accelerating, but this is not limited to our industry. This is more general. We are all discovering how much it would be good in the future to be resilient to such situation as the one we have been facing with our factories not able to host our employees, to be resilient by having maybe not fully automated robots to do the job, but at least teleoperated robots. And we see that everywhere around us. Until now, this was our vision of our factories. I will not be too long, of our factories in 2030. When we project our views to 2030, our factories will be equipped with very flexible robotic systems. I think this will come earlier than what we were believing until now. So one effect, again, one positive effect of the crisis, and we, of course, all have to be positive after this crisis and see the benefits we will draw from it.
Thank you very much. So we have covered the 5 themes that we had prepared. Thank you very much. And I will give you the floor back to Vincent Bamberger, who is a managing partner of the Paris office at Arthur D. Little, for the wrap-up and the conclusion.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you for this very interesting discussion and inputs. My key takeaways of this discussion are the following. First of all, I was quite surprised about how fast the big organization get adapted. When we were discussing about Airbus or ArianeGroup, we have always an image of something quite difficult to move. And suddenly with the COVID, it seems that everything was quite easy to move and that a lot of things was feasible. So this was my first takeaway. After that, regarding the main outputs of the discussion, first of all, on the decision-making processes, I was surprised on the ability of the word focus. Actually, you were very much focused on what was really important, and it has boosted on the decision-making processes, the ability to keep selective on what you need to do and what you need to stop to do, which is I think also a key takeaway. Second topic on culture and organization, the words that come out of the discussion was power and trust, because you were more or less obliged to rely on the people, and it has worked. Agility, boosting digitization, a new way of working, and actually globalization, because you travel less, so it's much more easy to work globally in a certain sense. And the last topic on the technology, we were discussing on this, and actually in the discussion, we understood that there was a huge link between the support of the government and your own interest. So actually what was favored in the different technology was more or less all what is green. Hydrogen obviously is one of the topics. All what is linked to the data, and especially the secure cloud and the topic of sovereignty linked to data is coming on top of the mind in this area. Third topic is more or less Earth observation, space industry. I will say what is happening to our planet. And this is back on top of the priorities. And last but not least is what I can call the unmanned technology, how to make the world more resilient to something that we are facing. So this was in a nutshell the key takeaways that I've grasped in this discussion. Once again, it was very interesting in my view. I wish to thank you both, and thank you Albert for the moderation, and thank you all of the attendees for participating to this webinar.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye bye everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye bye.